Joining us now is Reverend Raphael Warnock, the projected winner for a U.S. Senate seat for the state of Georgia. Congratulations, Reverend Warnock.
Thank you so very much. It's great to be here with you.
We appreciate the time. You made history for Georgia today, the first African-American elected to the U.S. Senate from the state of Georgia. Talk about the significance for our state and also for you personally.
We made history together, and I'm so very proud of our state. When I think about the long arc of our history, the struggle to build what Dr. King called the beloved community, I think, about people close to me. I think about my own mother. She's 82 years old. She grew up in Waycross, Georgia. And as a black teenager in the 1950s, she spent many days picking somebody else's cotton. Well, the other day she got to help pick her youngest son to be a United States Senator. I'm very proud of our state because, as we will know shortly, not only did the state send me, but it's sending John Ossoff, the son of an immigrant, a young Jewish man, and that Georgia is sending the two of us in this moment in which we've seen the emergence of forces that are trying to stir up the old forms of bigotry and racism and tribalisms that divide us. The election itself is a kind of message, and I'm grateful that the people of Georgia would put their trust in me, someone who was born and raised in public housing. I hope to bring the concerns of struggling families and ordinary people to the United States Senate.
Reverend Warnock, you mentioned your mother. I'm curious, have you had that phone call with her yet? And if so, what'd she say?
Yes, we called her last night. I didn't want her to make the trip because of COVID, but I called her, and other members of the family were there, and we were all excited, and told her that I'd won, and of course she was glad to be speaking to her son, and that I now have the title Senator-elect. But as moms do, she reminded me that she's still mama, therefore she's in charge. And I'm very clear about that.
Some things never change. Absolutely. You mentioned the significance of both your win and also the significance of John Ossoff. I'm sure you heard the sentiment very many times that Georgia is red. It will always be red. Then President-elect Joe Biden turns Georgia blue. I read a headline that says Georgia's getting more blue, and this Senate race shows us just how much. What are your thoughts on where Georgia stands and where it's going politically?
Well, listen, I think that the people of Georgia stood up last night, and, I know that we're living in an intense political period, but when I talk to ordinary people who are trying to figure out how to stay in their homes, they're trying to figure out whether or not they're going to be able to keep their health care because they have a pre-existing condition. They too often are having to decide between prescription drugs and buying food. And I don't think they look at those issues through the lens of red and blue. These are issues of right and wrong, not so much right and left. And what I hope to do is bring a kind of sensitivity and sensibility to the discussions that we have in the U.S. Senate that center the concerns of ordinary people. I think there are structural issues in our politics that create this kind of ongoing partisan divide. And as long as the interests of politicians are centered rather than the people, we'll get what we're getting right now in Washington, D.C., a Senate where you have senators who know better, are talking about undermining the voices of the people. Here's what they ought to be doing right now. They ought to be passing the $2,000 stimulus for folks who are struggling and have been waiting for months for relief. We ought to be focused on strengthening the Affordable Care Act. We ought to be doing everything we can to get this vaccine distributed safely and efficiently, saving the health of the American people and the health of our economy.
How does it change? You enter the United States Senate, as you say, at an extraordinarily divided time. Today, some of your fellow soon-to-be senators will be actually voting to object the certification of President-elect Joe Biden. So it really can feel like a stalemate as the American people watch on. What is the answer to moving forward, to getting things done? What will be your focus as you approach this time in our history and try to repair a divide that has grown so deep over the last years?
Well, I think the people of Georgia took an important step last night towards getting that work done. I think they rebuked the kind of cynical exercise of political power that we will witness later today. And I think that the way to undo this is for the people to keep standing up, which is why I've been engaged for years in registering voters in this state. We registered hundreds of thousands of voters in this state. I think that the only way to save our democracy is for the people to rise up, which is why I, as a pastor, not a career politician, decided to get in this race. Too often I've seen politics being centered around the politicians, that we have politicians who are so focused on the next election that they're not thinking about the next generation. That's what's driving this challenge to the Electoral College today. They know where this ends up, but it's political ambition. It's centering of one's own interests that's driving this. Meanwhile, we've seen a death of 350,000 Americans and counting. Small businesses are struggling. Unemployment rates unlike anything we've seen since the Great Depression. It's time to handle the people's business. I'm grateful that the people of Georgia have placed their trust in me. I'm putting my work boots on. I can't wait to get to Washington to stand up for them.
If things stand as they are now, Reverend Warnock, the balance of power would go to the Democrats in the United States Senate. What would be your #1 priority as you start your term?
We've got to get serious about this COVID-19 challenge. And the tone for that is set at the top. I mean, you know, I think it's dangerous and unfortunate if we become numb to the death of 350,000 of our neighbors. I mean, we need to let that sit with us, and we need to let that guide us as we do the work that needs to be done. People need relief. We need to get the vaccine distributed safely and efficiently. And we need to learn the lessons of this pandemic. And one of those lessons is that we need all of our neighbors to have access to affordable health care. We are as close to one another, tied to one another in our collective destiny as a cough, as a sneeze. The other lesson we learned in this pandemic is that many of the people that we have diminished are absolutely critical. The folks we've ignored, the folks we refuse to pay a livable wage, all of a sudden, we're calling them essential workers. Well, since we understand that now, we ought to pay them an essential wage, make sure they have essential benefits. I hope to be their voice in the United States Senate.
Final question for me, Reverend Warnock, to the voters in Georgia who are convinced that this election was not fair, that it was stolen. Your words to them as you try to unite the voters in our state.
I intend to be a United States Senator representing all the people of Georgia. That's why during this campaign, I made my way all across the state. I dropped by a lot of small towns, and quite frankly, they were surprised that I was there. I was surprised that they were surprised. But they said, we're not used to someone running for the U.S. Senate or a sitting United States Senator dropping by our town. I intend to keep reaching out to people all across this state because at some point, you need to put politics aside and do the work of the people. In this critical hour in our American democracy, in this moment in which we are waging war against the virus, we can ill afford to continue to wage war against one another. Dr. King is right. We're tied in a single garment of destiny. I hope to push us closer toward the beloved community that embraces all of us and provides a future for all of our children.
Reverend Raphael Warnock, we really appreciate the time. Thank you so much.